The first time I noticed a package missing, I figured it was porch pirates. It happens. But when it kept happening every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork, I knew it wasn't random. Someone in my own neighborhood was targeting me. My name's Xander Griggs. I'm a trauma nurse and a single dad to my 9-year-old son, Zeke. We moved into this HOA-run neighborhood in Central Florida 3 months ago. I was hoping for peace. What I got was Vivian Barkley. Vivian is the HOA president. Mid-50s, hair like a helmet, voice like a foghorn, and a permanent scowl glued to her face. She calls herself a guardian of community standards. But really, she's just a bitter woman with too much time and a clipboard. Vivian had it out for me the day we moved in. "You'll need to repaint your mailbox," she announced before I'd even unloaded a single box. "That shade of gray doesn't meet our aesthetic guidelines." I didn't paint it. From that day on, little things started happening. Petty violations, fines for overgrown grass when it was freshly mowed. A warning letter for parking at a non-approved angle, seriously. But the packages, that's what pushed me over the edge. Amazon, ups, even a birthday gift my sister sent for Zeke, all gone. I checked with neighbors. No one saw anything, but I knew it wasn't coincidence, so I played a little game. I installed a camera inside a fake rock near my porch. Motion activated, silent, and aimed right at the steps. 3 days later, it caught her. There she was, Vivian Barkley. HOA badge clipped to her pastel blouse like she was some kind of authority. She strutted up to my porch like she owned it, scooped up the box like it was garbage, and walked off, tossing it into a large black trash bag in her cart. I rewound the footage. She'd done it before, multiple times. Always the same motion, same smug look. I stood there, stunned. She wasn't just a busybody, she was stealing. I printed the footage, saved copies to 3 different drives, and called the police. When the officer showed up, Officer Delaney, he didn't even blink. "You're the 3rd guy this year. Same woman, different tricks," he muttered. "Last time she claimed it was abandoned property." "She's throwing it away," I said, handing him the video. "That box had medical supplies for my job." He watched the footage silently, then nodded. "She's done." I didn't expect what happened next. The HOA had a meeting that night. Public. Vivian, as usual, conducted it like a dictator at a podium. I wasn't even planning to go until Officer Delaney called me. "You might want to be there," he said. "We're serving her tonight." The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a beige stucco box with flickering fluorescent lights and a smell that hinted at decades of burned coffee. Folding chairs lined the room, filled with the usual suspects. Retirees with nothing else to do, a few young couples trying to stay off the HOA radar, and one guy in a lawn care uniform who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I stood near the back, arms crossed, eyes locked on the podium. Vivian stood at the front, flanked by her 2 cronies, Leonard and Phyllis. Leonard looked like he'd just stepped out of a Norman Rockwell painting, complete with suspenders and a perpetual scowl. Phyllis wore a visor indoors and held a clipboard like it was a holy relic. "Let's begin," Vivian barked. "We'll start with the landscaping violations from last week." The door opened. Officer Delaney stepped inside, uniform crisp, expression unreadable. He wasn't alone. A plainclothes detective followed, a woman in her 40s with a calm, deliberate gait and a folder tucked under her arm. The room shifted instantly. Chairs creaked. Someone coughed. Vivian's hand froze mid-gesture. "Vivian Barkley," Delaney's voice cut through the murmurs. She glanced around, laughably trying to act surprised. "Yes, officer, you're being served with a warrant related to felony theft and destruction of property." A gasp rippled across the room. Leonard sat bolt upright. Phyllis dropped her pen. "You must be joking," Vivian said, trying for a laugh. "This is a misunderstanding." I was simply. The detective opened the folder and laid several printed stills on the table beside her. "We have time-stamped footage of you removing mail and packages from a resident's porch on 5 separate occasions. Each instance is documented. The contents of at least 2 of those packages were medical equipment valued over $2,000. Vivian's eyes darted toward me. I didn't look away. Impossible, she snapped. If someone left items unattended, it's my duty to— You're not a federal employee, the detective said flatly. You have no jurisdiction over private mail or parcels. What you did constitutes mail theft. That's a federal offense. And because you disposed of the items, it's being escalated. You can't do this in a public meeting, she snapped, voice rising. I can and I am, Delaney replied. You've been warned before. This time it's going to court. They didn't cuff her, but the message was clear. Vivian froze for a long second, then turned on her heel and walked out stiffly, the detective following. The door clicked shut behind them. Nobody said a word for a solid minute. Then someone in the front row, a young mom I only recognized from passing jogs, let out a low whistle. So, are we still talking about grass violations? Laughter broke out, nervous at first, then real. Leonard cleared his throat. We'll reconvene next week. I stepped outside into the humid night air, pulse still steady. The next morning, I found a printed apology from the HOA stuffed in my mailbox. No signature, just the generic letterhead and a vague acknowledgement of recent events. I kept it. That weekend, I noticed something else. Neighbors who had previously avoided eye contact now waved as I passed. A few stopped to chat. One guy, Miguel, who lived 2 doors down, walked over while I was trimming the hedges. You're the nurse, right? He asked. Yeah, you know, I had a package of insulin supplies vanish last month, he said quietly. I thought I'd just misplaced it. Didn't think someone would actually take it, I nodded. You should file a report, they're building a case, he hesitated. Think it'll matter? She tossed mine like garbage. I've got it all on video, they're taking it seriously now. Miguel exhaled, then nodded. Thanks. For not letting it slide. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me. She'd been doing this for years, hiding behind her title, banking on people being too tired or too busy to push back, and I had no intention of letting it end with just an arrest. The next HOA meeting was quiet. Leonard awkwardly read through agenda items like he'd forgotten how to speak in public. Phillies didn't say a word the entire night. At the end, someone raised their hand, a woman in the back row with a service dog at her feet. I'd like to make a motion, she said. That we hold a special election to replace the president, whispers erupted. Leonard looked like he'd swallowed a marble. That's highly irregular, it's in the bylaws, she said without flinching. Section 9, Paragraph 2. In the event of criminal charges, the board may vote to initiate a community-wide election for leadership roles. People murmured in agreement. I watched Phillies flip through her clipboard, eyes wide. I second that motion, a man near the front said. Then another voice, third, Leonard sighed, shoulders slumping. Fine, we'll schedule it. That night I spoke to my neighbor Dana, who'd lived in the neighborhood for 15 years. You should run, she said. You've already done more to protect this place than anyone on that board ever has. I shook my head. I work nights, I've got Zeke, I'm not exactly HOA material. That's why you'd be good, she said. You're not trying to control people, you're trying to live here. That's what we need. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. 2 days later, I got a call from the detective. Vivian had tried to argue that the packages were a neighborhood hazard and that she was protecting community integrity. The judge wasn't impressed. The case was moving forward. She'd be facing multiple counts of theft and tampering with delivery parcels. If convicted, she could see real jail time. She's lawyered up, the detective said, but the footage is airtight. She's got no good explanation for what she did. I thanked her and hung up. Then I pulled up the HOA's member portal and downloaded the bylaws. Dana was right. If we didn't change the board, someone like Vivian would take her place. And next time, they might be smarter about hiding what they were doing. The election date was set for the end of the month. I didn't campaign. I just talked to people, answered questions, told the truth. I wasn't promising to fix everything, just to stop people like Vivian from thinking they could rule by fear and fines. Word spread. Not everyone was on board, but enough were. The night of the vote, over 60 people showed up. That was nearly triple the usual number. When they announced the results, it wasn't even close. I won. As I walked to the front of the room, people clapped not loud, but real, genuine. I looked out at the rows of faces, some tired, some hopeful, some just curious, and realized what had shifted. This was no longer Vivian's neighborhood. It was ours. 3 weeks into my new role on the HOA board, I realized something unsettling. Vivian hadn't acted alone. I didn't want the position, but now that I had it, I owed it to the people who'd supported me to do more than just sit in a chair and nod through landscaping reports. So I started digging quietly. The board's files were a mess. Old paper records were stuffed into warped filing cabinets in the back of the clubhouse. Half were missing dates, and others were signed with initials that didn't match any current or former board member. I found handwritten notes on the backs of utility bills, fines scribbled on napkins, even a spreadsheet labeled compliance bonus schedule buried in a USB drive that had been taped to the underside of a drawer. That spreadsheet made me pause. It listed names, residents, board members, even vendors, and next to each was a dollar amount. Under notes, it said things like, for enforcement follow-up, mailroom recovery, and one that chilled me. Sensitive disposal repeat offender. I took photos of everything and brought it to the detective handling Vivian's case. Her name was Detective Callahan, and her poker face was impressive, but even she leaned forward when I handed her the USB. "You find this where?" she asked. "Clubhouse file room," I said. "I've got the original." Didn't touch the metadata. She glanced at her partner, a younger guy who immediately pulled out a laptop and started checking the drive. Callahan looked up. "You understand what this could mean, right?" "I've got a guess," I said. "But I'd rather hear it from you. If this is what it looks like, it's organized fraud, at minimum, possibly mail tampering, financial misconduct, and if those payments came from HOA funds embezzlement." That word hung in the air like a thunderclap. I left them with the files and returned home, heart pounding. That night, I stayed up later than usual, watching Zeke sleep from the hallway. This wasn't just about packages anymore. This was systemic. The next morning, I called an emergency board meeting. Only 3 members showed: Leonard, Dana, and a quiet woman named Rena who'd mostly kept to herself since joining. Phillies had resigned 2 days after the vote, citing health concerns. No one had heard from her since. I laid the documents out on the table. Leonard squinted at the spreadsheet. "Where'd you get this?" "Clubhouse file room," I said. "Taped under a drawer." "That's not official," he said quickly. "Could have been planted. Anyone could have written this." "Someone with access to internal records," I said, tapping the vendor names. "Look, these match invoices from last quarter." "Same amounts, same dates." Rena leaned in. "What's mailroom recovery code?" Dana said sharply. "It's code for theft, that's what it is. They were stealing from people and calling it clean up." Leonard opened his mouth, then closed it again. I didn't blame him for being rattled. He'd been on the board for over a decade, probably thinking it was all bake sales and hedge trimming. But now we were staring at a paper trail that led right into criminal territory. "I've already handed a copy to the police," I said. "They're opening a wider investigation." "We need to freeze the HOA accounts." Leonard looked panicked. "That's not within our authority. It is now," Dana cut in. "Look at Section 12, Clause 4. In the event of suspected misuse of funds, the board has the right to place a temporary hold pending legal review." Rena nodded. "I read the bylaws last week. She's right." Leonard rubbed his temples. "This is going to blow up the whole neighborhood." "Then it blows up," I said. "Better that than letting it keep rotting under the surface." We voted 3-1 to freeze discretionary spending and notify the HOA's accountant. Leonard abstained, but he didn't try to stop us. That night, I received a call from Detective Callahan. We opened the HOA's bank records. There are over 20 payments labeled compliance incentives. Most were routed through a third-party shell account under the name Barkley Management Services. "Vivian?" I asked. "Vivian," she confirmed. "The account was set up 6 years ago." We traced payments made to her directly over $45,000 in total, spread out over dozens of transactions. I felt my stomach drop. And the board? There's no evidence anyone else received direct payments, yet, she said, but we're not done. We're subpoenaing the HOA's internal emails next. I thanked her and hung up. The neighborhood was still mostly quiet. Word hadn't spread yet, though a few neighbors had started asking why the landscaping crew hadn't shown up. I told them the truth. Budget review, temporary freeze, nothing more. But inside, I was burning. Vivian hadn't just stolen packages. She'd been embezzling from us for years. And she'd used that money to build power, buying silence, punishing dissent, rewarding loyalty. I decided we had to go public. We printed a summary of the findings, no accusations, just facts. Dates, financial amounts, quotes from the bylaws, and confirmation that a police investigation was underway. We passed them out door to door. No dramatic headlines, just the truth. Within 48 hours, the neighborhood was buzzing. Old alliances fractured. Former supporters of Vivian stopped returning calls. I even saw Leonard's wife on her front porch handing out bottled water to two neighbors who'd never spoken to her before. Then came the letter, typed, "Anonymous, slipped under my door. You're making enemies." Not everyone wants things to change. I read it twice before folding it into my pocket and locking every door in the house. The next morning, as I walked Zeke to the bus stop, I noticed something odd. A silver sedan idling at the end of the block. Windows tinted darker than legally allowed. It drove off the moment I made eye contact. That night, I installed 2 more cameras, one facing the street, one covering the backyard. I wasn't taking chances. The detective called again 2 days later. "We got the emails," she said. "There's more." "I'm listening." Vivian coordinated with a vendor, Allied Property Services, to inflate maintenance costs. They'd bill for work that was never done, then split the difference. We found invoices for tree trimming on dates when no crew was in the area. Same with sidewalk repairs. How much? Estimated over 100,000, possibly more. We're expanding the investigation to include the vendor. This is officially a joint operation now, local PD and the state attorney's office. I was silent for a moment. Then I asked, "Can we get restitution?" She breathed out. "If we win the case and if we can trace the funds, yes. But it'll be a long process." The next HOA meeting was standing room only. People who'd never shown up before packed the clubhouse in folding chairs and camp stools. Some stood against the walls, arms crossed. No one laughed. No one smiled. I stood at the front, flanked by Dana and Rena. Leonard sat off to the side, staring at the floor. "We have a responsibility to inform you of ongoing legal proceedings involving former board leadership," I began. "An investigation is underway. Law enforcement is involved. We've frozen non-essential spending until this is resolved." A man in the back raised his hand. "How'd this happen without anyone noticing?" Dana answered. "Because they counted on us not looking. We trusted them and they used that trust." An older woman near the front spoke up. "Is my dues money gone?" "No," I said. "The core accounts are intact. The theft came from inflated contracts and discretionary funds. But yes, some of it was stolen. We're fighting to get it back." There was a long silence. Then someone clapped, one pair of hands, then a second, then more, not applause, support. That night I sat on my porch watching the neighborhood. The same porch where my packages had vanished one by one under Vivian's self-righteous crusade. Now the street was quiet. But it didn't feel tense, it felt awake. By the end of the month, the neighborhood looked different, not physically, but in the way people carried themselves. Doors that were once shut tight during HOA meetings were now open for block gatherings. Kids played freely again without parents worrying about phantom violations. But under the surface, the storm hadn't passed. It was only gathering strength. Detective Callahan called me at 7:45 a.m. On a Wednesday, I was just coming off a double shift and hadn't even taken my shoes off. "We've got movement," she said. The state attorney filed formal charges against Vivian Barkley this morning, 4 counts of felony mail theft. 2 counts of wire fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Court date's been set. I leaned against the wall and exhaled slowly. Is she cooperating? She's not talking, Callahan said. But her attorney's trying to negotiate. They're pushing for a plea deal, restitution and probation in exchange for a full confession. What's your take? She has leverage, she said. If she flips on the contractors and details how the money was laundered, the prosecution might consider it. But it's not a guaranteed walk. I hung up and stared at the stack of unopened mail on my dining table. The irony wasn't lost on me. Later that week, I was summoned to a meeting, not an HOA one, but something more official. It was held in a windowless conference room inside the county office building. Present were 2 assistant district attorneys, a paralegal and Detective Callahan. They handed me a folder with a court seal and a thick packet of documentation. You've been listed as a primary witness and victim, one of the attorneys said. We're building toward a grand jury presentation. The video you submitted is central evidence. We need you to testify. I nodded. Whatever you need. That includes financial damages, the paralegal added. The court will consider restitution claims when sentencing. We'll need itemized estimates of what was lost and any replacement costs. I spent the next 2 days compiling every receipt I had, from the medical gear to Zeke's birthday package to the ruined textbooks I'd reordered twice. By the time I calculated everything, the total was just under $3,000. Not life-ruining, but enough to sting. Enough to matter. The trial date was set for early June. Vivian didn't show up to the preliminary hearings. Her attorney stood in her place, citing medical complications and requesting a continuance. The judge wasn't buying it. He denied the motion and scheduled jury selection. The neighborhood buzzed with updates. I didn't spread details, but word traveled. People who'd once turned a blind eye now stopped me at the mailbox or during evening walks. One evening, a woman I'd never met approached me outside the grocery store. You're the man who stood up to her, right? Vivian, I nodded cautiously. She fined my daughter twice for leaving her bike leaning against the garage, said it was visual clutter. I paid it both times because I thought that's how it worked. Keep your receipts, I said. They're investigating everything now. She nodded and walked away, clutching her bag like it held something precious. The trial lasted 4 days. I was called on the second morning. The courtroom was colder than I expected: plain walls, old carpet, dim lighting. Vivian sat at the defense table in a navy pantsuit, her hair flatter than I'd ever seen it, her expression unreadable. She didn't look at me once. I was sworn in and took the stand. The prosecutor walked me through the footage, frame by frame. I answered every question clearly, calmly, no dramatics. Just the truth. When you reviewed the footage, what did you think? She asked. I thought it confirmed what I already knew, I said. That she wasn't just enforcing rules, she was targeting people. And when she took the package labeled urgent medical supplies from your porch, she knew what it was, I said. The label was bright red. She looked at it before tossing it into the bag. The jury watched silently. Some took notes. One woman looked visibly angry on cross-examination. Vivian's attorney tried to spin it. Isn't it possible she believed the packages were abandoned? No, I said flatly. She didn't knock. She didn't leave a note. She didn't log them. She bagged them and left. The attorney tried again. But you never confronted her directly. Correct. I wanted evidence, I replied. Confrontation wouldn't stop her. Proof would. Later that day, they brought up a forensic accountant to detail the financial trail: payments funneled through shell companies, inflated invoices, and duplicate charges for services never rendered. The jury was visibly disturbed. One man pinched the bridge of his nose throughout the entire testimony. On the final day, Vivian took the stand. Her voice was hoarse and she spoke slowly, like someone reciting lines she didn't believe. I was trying to maintain order, she said. Things were getting out of control. People were leaving deliveries out for days. It was unsightly. The prosecutor didn't let that sit. Were these packages reported to postal authorities? No. Were residents notified? No. Did you profit from any of the services listed under Barkley Management Services? She hesitated. I was reimbursed for administrative duties. Over $100,000. She didn't answer. The prosecution rested an hour later. The jury deliberated for 6.5 hours, guilty, all counts. The judge sentenced her to 20 months in state prison plus 5 years probation. She was ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA and all individual victims, including me. The courtroom was silent as the gavel fell. She didn't look back. Afterward, I walked out of the courthouse into the late afternoon sun. Dana was waiting for me by the curb, arms crossed, sunglasses on. "Justice served," she said, mostly. "There's still repairs to make." The HOA held a public forum the next week, no agenda, no gavel, just chairs in a circle and neighbors talking. We discussed transparency policies, proposed a rotating audit committee, and voted to permanently ban any board member from holding private contracts with the HOA. New leadership was voted in. Dana took over as president, and I stayed on as vice president long enough to solidify new checks and balances. By the end of the summer, I stepped down, not out of frustration, but because the job was finally being done right. One morning, a package arrived on my doorstep. It was a small box addressed to Zeke. Inside was a simple card and an unopened Lego set, the same one that had gone missing months ago, now replaced by the court's restitution order. Zeke looked up at me with wide eyes. "Is it okay to open it this time?" I smiled. "Yeah, buddy, this one's staying right here." We sat on the living room floor, surrounded by scattered bricks and instruction booklets, laughing and building. Outside, the neighborhood hummed with life, no clipboards, no threats, just people reclaiming their homes. I installed a new mailbox that weekend. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And this time, I painted it whatever color I felt like.